Alright, that should be 6/1000ths. Alright, so that's the edge right there, and so now I'm going to move over 500/1000ths, and that should be right in the middle, left to right, which one of the two points that I want is going to be halfway between the two. The other one's going to be offset. Alright, so that's I'm going to lock the table. Alright, one down. This is 32/1000ths over an inch. Alright, so I want to move from this edge over 438.5 so 0.4385. Probably don't have to worry about the 0.5 but now I'm just going to zero my dial, and I'm going to go 438/1000ths. So let's see. One revolution is 200/1000ths. So yeah, let's call that a half right there. I'll lock the table. Okay, now get this out of there. Guess I'll have to lower the knee. Alright, so I was just trying to figure out what size drill I wanted, what size hole I want here. And my bearing is measuring 627.5 625/1000ths is 5/8, I believe. Double check that in a second. So what I figure is the 2.5 over is because this is designed to be pressed in. So I think that's what gives you the press fit, that it's 2.5. So I think if I drill a 5/8 hole, I'll be able to press this in. I'm gonna see if I can find that in the machinist handbook, just to double check that. That sounds plausible to me though. But I bet you in the hands of somebody who knows what they're doing, this is pretty easy. But for a noob like me, this book has so much information, and it is Greek. A lot of this is Greek to me. But I did find there is in the table of contents, I know we're talking about fit and fits. And I don't mean like, you know, throwing a fit or having the fits. Oh, here it is. Allowances and tolerances for fits, 1506 to 1542. So if I open up to 1506 where it starts, there's a ton of information. Okay, but I weeded through, and I already know from reading in another textbook that the definition of the type of fit that I'm talking about, this press fit, is called a force fit. I think it's a force fit. And force fit and shrink fit apparently have something in common. But a shrink fit is where you heat up the part, put the other part inside of it, and then when that part cools down, it's a really tight fit. As opposed to a force fit where I'm just going to drive this in with the arbor press. Allowance for forced fits. The allowance per inch of diameter usually ranges from 0.001 to 0.0025. So 1 to 2.5 thousandths, with 1.5 thousandths being a fair average. Alright, so if it's a 1-inch shaft, 1.5 thousandths would be fair, and since this is 5/8, it's less than that. So that's going to be actually a pretty tight fit. And then there's a chart back here that, if you really know how to read Greek, right here, well, that's British Standard, my mistake. There we go, USA Standards Force and Shrink Fits. And this goes all the way up to 20 inches. I can imagine if you get a 20-inch diameter shaft that you're going to force fit into a hole. Let's see. So we're at 0.625, so we're down here. Interference fit 0.2 to 0.9. Hole 0.40. Shaft, see, I don't understand, this is 0.9, 0.6. Standard tolerance limits. Okay, interference. So this is different classes of force fit. FN1, FN2, FN3, FN4, FN5. You go all the way up to FN5, it shows that the shaft can be, looks like 2 thousandths over. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill the best 5/8 hole that I can and try and get that in there. And if it's too darn tight, then I'll try and ream the hole. Hopefully I don't ruin my little block that I spent all this time making. Alright, let's let it rip. That's not running very true. Alright, I'm going to try this other Albert chuck that I've got. This is the Albert chuck that I bought from Craigslist. And this is the one that looked like it was in really, really good shape when I bought it. This has got a much larger shank on it. So I'm going to be changing collet sizes. So even if this runs true, doesn't necessarily mean I get a problem with the chuck. It could have been that collet. We'll try this. This is the Taiwanese knockoff that I got with that Albrecht chuck that I just tried. This runs way out of whack, so I'm not sure what the deal is with this. So maybe those chucks were both bad. That's better, but I still see a little perceptible movement in there. That's disheartening. Well, when I just tried to dry fit it by hand, it almost seems like, oh, there was no way that was going to go in there. But with the arbor press, it's going. It went. Now the only question is, was it too tight? Because if it was too tight, then what might happen is it might actually cause this ID to decrease. So I'll have to try it on the shaft. All right, so it's kind of close here because I haven't notched out this plate like I planned to. So even if I try and put it on this way, I don't think, oh yeah, it just clears that way. But guess what? It's getting stuck here, and this bearing was sliding on easily before. I think that press fit was too tight. I think that hole should have been a little larger. You know, the drill was 5/8, 625 thousandths. But when I measured this hole, it was 624. It was about a thousandths under. I should have maybe gotten a reamer and seen if I could ream this hole a tiny bit larger before I pressed that in there. Now I think what's happened is, unfortunately, I think I've gone and moved this carriage back so I can pull this out a little bit, make sure I'm not hitting that. Pretty sure that's not the problem though. Yeah, see, that does not want to go on there now. Yep. Somebody experienced would have probably known that wasn't going to work. Alright, so now what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to ream the inside of that bearing. Of course, now the oil clearance probably won't be correct. Oh well. Live and learn. Alright, I found a 3/8 straight reamer, and I measured the outside of that shaft, and looks like that's what that is. So I'm going to run this reamer through here, see if that solves my problem. Barely did anything. Well, that reamer didn't seem like it really did anything as far as cutting, but it did end up fixing the problem. So I think what actually happened was, I don't think I so much shrunk the entire bearing as I think I just deformed the very edge and where I was pressing on it, and I think that's where it just cut that little lip off and corrected the problem. So now it slides on, it fits perfect. So now I just took some measurements so I can figure out how I'm going to modify that plate to accept this. Alright, so now I'm back to this piece right here, and I'm going to put the modifications on this that I was trying to explain before. What I did was I left the block a little bit wider than it needs to be, so that now I can come back here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a groove down the back of this that this block is going to sit in, and that'll give that some good rigidity. And then the idea is that when I put my screw through the back side here into there, my screw that's going to be designed to shear away if the lathe crashes, what should happen hopefully is that when the screw shears, the block will be able to just move along out of the channel and allow the lead screw to unscrew itself and stop the feed. Alright, so I mounted the piece in the vise, and I got the cutter, the edge of the cutter, over to where it needs to be to cut the slot. and locked the saddle to take care of that. Now, to get the depth, all I did was I brought the cutter just over the very edge. I used a fine feed on the quill, and I've got the cutter going real slow thanks to the VFD. And I just brought the fine feed down until I can just see it making a line on there. And I know I'm just touching off on the top of that block. Now, I'm going to lock the quill there. And I'm going to bring the cutter off the table. I'm going to zero my dial on my knee. And now I'm going to bring the knee up 200 thousandths, which is my cut. There's my 200 thousandths. Lock the knee. Bring my speed up, get my safety glasses, and make my cut. Now I checked the OD on this cutter, and I know this is actually under 1 inch. The only other cutter I had that was closer to 1 inch was a really long end mill, and I didn't want to use that. So I know I'm going to have to make a what the heck's going on there? That's interesting. Broke out the other side. That's something nasty. Alright, so nice clean looking groove. I have to deburr it obviously, but let's see. So that's gonna be, this is supposed to go in this way in this groove. And you can see it won't even fit, which makes sense because this is actually a couple of thousandths over 1 inch, and this is currently under. I don't really like the idea of running the cutter back without raising it up, but I don't like disturbing my settings here. Well, if I make my clearance cut down this back side, the cutter going this direction and the table going that way, that'll be conventional milling, which is what I want. So I think that's what I'm going to do. Alright, so let's see if I can't figure out how much I need to cut. Get 955 thousandths. So 955, so I need 45 thousandths to get an inch, and I'm 3 thousandths over an inch. So let's go 48 thousandths. So I want to move the table this way, 48 thousandths. So before I unlock the saddle, I'm going to set my dial at 0. And I get lost motion in there I got to take into account. Oh, actually I'm going this way, so good. Alright, that should do it. Perfect. Wow. Talk about beginner's luck. I mean, that's nice. I like that. Cool beans. I'm just going to double check the fit on the lathe. Well guys, not too bad, but in the interest of full disclosure and to be 100% honest, I would say that I am too deep on this groove. or a little too deep, I should say. In other words, I don't think or know at this point whether or not it's going to be a problem. But the way I know that is because I slide the block onto the shaft here, and I've got this bolted in, and there is a gap between the back of the block and the bottom of the groove, which is ideally I don't want there. Now I can't undo that because if it wasn't shallow and if it wasn't deep enough, I could always take a little bit more off, but can't put back what I took out. Well, not without some serious refabricating, which wouldn't be worth it. It's not like a shaft where it's like, oh, if it's a critical shaft and you turn it down too far, you know, build it up with weld and remachine it. This is going to be one of those deals where if it was way too deep, I'd just scrap it. But I can push this in, and when I screw it in, it's going to be pulled in. And that, if it's okay, then we'll leave it. If not, what I'll do is I'll shim the back of this block. So here's a better look at. You can see that gap that's in there. And right now I can't really flex it much because I've got the got a captive in the half nut. But if I take the half nut off, you can see that moves right in. Okay, so the question is, when I put the half nut on, you see it pulls it back out. The only time where I could see where that would be an issue is if I had the carriage way up this end of the bed. I mean, you'd have to have, first of all, the carriage is never going to be this far over. You know, at best, if you had a long shaft in here that you were turning, which I don't even know if you're ever going to do that on this lathe, because quite frankly, there's no study rest for this one. You have to make one. Alright, but let's say, alright, there's the carriage halfway down the bed. If I put the half nut on down here, yeah, it still pulls it out. But nothing I can't. Actually, nope. That's okay. That's going to be fine. Bet you that dozen donuts that'll be fine. Cool beans.